Stock market is nothing more than a marketing campaign designed to suck you in because you buy into people's and other companies' ideas. 99% of them fail. If you actually have the skill set to make money, that's what kills the worry of finances. I recognize that, you know what, some of the greatest triumphs in the world and some of the greatest people in the world, they go through some of the biggest setbacks, whatever their version of a setback is, right? Yeah. And when I started seeing that, okay, well, these people, they had a similar victim story that's, you know, to them important. Well, then who am I to sit here and justify it? Right? Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of funny and it's a paradox.
Do you regret that at all or no?
Now I do.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, well...
We are live. Eisa, what's going on, man?
Hey,
how are you, bro?
How you doing?
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank
dude.
you.
Yeah, we just jumped right into it. So
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
It's like, psych, here we are.
No. I mean, that's the best way to do it because we got to keep this natural and we keep it running. So, you got introduced to the two co-hosts.
I did.
Right? Love these guys to death. They make this podcast a lot more fun than for me to be solo. See, look how nice he is. Wow. So you've got a lot going on your plate, but I think it's very interesting because like we were talking on the car ride over here, like you've kind of dipped your hands in like very random areas.
Yeah.
When I say random in a sense of like you're doing stocks, you're doing real estate, you also like to fly planes.
Yeah.
And you tend to enjoy, you said drumming?
Yeah.
How long are you doing that for?
Drumming?
Yeah.
Since I was 4.
Since you were 4?
Yeah, 4 years old, man.
So did you want to become like a rock star growing up?
Yeah, that's what it was.
That was
you know, I
your
was
thing?
pots and plates. You know? It's just like, yeah. Yeah, so that was my inspiration.
Pots and plates.
We were refugees in Sweden, man. So we had nothing. Yeah, we had nothing to our name. So, like, literally my life, guys. I'll give you 2 seconds of that to answer that question with pots and plates. Dude, we had one couch. It had a hole in it and one bed. I slept on the end of it. My parents were on the other end. And then pots and plates to music.
Nice.
That's it.
What got you started? What was the inspiration?
To play drums?
Yeah, drumming.
I don't know, man. I think there was a weird sort of... I don't know, kind of like a weird feeling of like you have no form of expression when you're like this refugee in a Scandinavian country by yourself. That to me was a form of expression, right? Like, you know, I get to put a rhythm to something, right? And I get to kind of be creative with it, and it's me. Nobody can really take that away from you. It's you and what you do with it, right? So, yeah, start with that.
That's cool. So, growing up, how was it? Like, what were you kind of thinking your future would look like?
Not what it is today.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I always had a passion for flying. That was like at 5.5. I knew I wanted to fly airplanes. But I didn't realize that it was going to be through the lens that I do it now. Like, you know, it's cool. I get to fly some of the coolest jets in the world right now while doing it on my own time. And sorry, the mic's all kind of messed there. Okay. Yeah, and then you know, I go, you know, touring, playing drums now as well on the side. And the stock market real estate thing was more so a realization that, you know what, the 2 things I love doing, you can't make a lot of money doing. So you need to have something else if you want to crush it financially.
Huh.
Yeah.
So your whole thing to make money was to make money so that you can go back and have fun.
Yeah, that's it. Like live life the way I want to do it, right? Like basically, yeah, because I think there was so much of like, oh, you should just make a lot of money for all these different reasons. But for me, it was like, you know what, I want to just live a life on my term. And ultimately, middle class salary, you can't do that, right? You're restricted one way or another.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Were you in corporate for a while before you started your journeys, or no?
Well, flying, I guess, kind of. I started flying when I was 15, man. I was in high school, right? So I kind of got catapulted into flying, and that's kind of a corporate setting. Right at 18, that was my first flying job. So did
you fly for like an airline or something?
No, you start flying little 4-seaters. You know the instructing that you were talking about earlier. Yeah. So start flying.
I don't know how the process works.
Yeah, it's all good. Flew little Cessnas. Teaching people how to fly after I got my licenses. You know, and then once you get experience, you go to little bigger airplanes, 9-seater planes, 30-seater aircraft, eventually to my first jet, and then so forth and so forth and so forth. And that's where I'm at today.
Malik, you were saying you took a flying lesson.
I took a lesson. Yeah. So I know almost everything that he's talking about.
Almost everything.
Almost.
Dude, from one lesson, we can pro.
No, I wouldn't say but like the Cessna, the 4-seater, like that's where I stopped. But like the 9-seater, the 20, and so on, there's...
You gotta respect his official title. What is it? Pilot.
Captain Malik.
I'm not claiming pilot at all, man, but I definitely respect the fact that you actually had a vision and you completed it. But then also like the mindset behind, hey, look, I want to have this kind of life, and do these kind of things that I'm very passionate about, that brings me joy, how am I going to get there? How am I going to be able to fuel that hobby or that passion? Well, I need some money. So for many people, we live in the whole society of us wanting to be just career driven, money hungry and stuff like this, where we're willing to and we want to do anything that we possibly can to take advantage of other people. But not many people have their why.
Yeah.
From a very young age, as you're talking about it, it makes sense why you're able to reach success at such a young age. It's because you had that why. Where not many people, I mean, some people, when they achieve such a huge achievement, they're like, what do I do? What am I doing this for? Why am I even here? So that's some of the things that I basically kind of understood. But my question is, it wasn't always easy, right? It wasn't always, there's obviously a huge learning curve to it. So what was the thing that really got you into like stocks and real estate?
So I think some context is important. So I was a refugee in Sweden.
Let's get the mic. So when you're
Sorry, man, I keep doing this the wrong way.
No,
Is
good.
that good?
You just want to keep it close to your
Right here. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Yeah, you can see I'm new to
You don't have to stuff it in your face.
Okay.
You can,
It could be like that.
Okay, good. So going back to what you're saying, right? I'll sit back here. Yeah, to kind of go back to what you were saying, dude. Started out refugees in Sweden, right? My parents, they left Iran. My dad was in the military after the revolution happened. He decided that this wasn't the country he had fought for anymore, right? So, yeah, we left right away. I was 6 months old, and yeah, man, it's a humble beginning because you get to realize that it really sucks struggling. It's not cool at all. Like there's an element to it where you don't. How do I say this? You can choose to continue struggling, but I think it can be a choice to also not struggle. And once I realized that, it changed the whole narrative. I think more so when we we moved to Canada when I was 13 years old. So we went to Sweden, got the whole thing there, became citizens and all that stuff. We realized that, being in a socialist country, you can't really build anything because everything's taxed. Everything's taken away. No matter how hard you work, it's all taken away from you right away, right? So my parents were like, you know what, screw this. Let's go to North America where you can partake in capitalism, right? Make money and hold on to most of that money if you know what to do with it, right? We came to Canada, 13 years of age. 2 weeks into high school, my dad died. Yeah, so it was an eye-opener to how short life can really be. And I kind of came from the point of view of, you know what, there's nothing for me left to lose at this point. I may as well go for the entire game, right? So if wealth is it, wealth is it. If it's not struggling is it, it's going to be not struggling. Whatever the nth degree of a fantastic life looks like, I wanted to give it my all. And yeah, I think that's where it all started, man. That's why stock markets. And that's, if you look at it, the elite, no matter all the crypto craze and all the things that you hear online today, they're still in the stock market for a reason.
That's very interesting. I was wondering, I'm always curious when people, suffer through something like that at a pretty young age. Was there a downward spiral before kind of like this realization and then making a positive change?
Yeah. And you're looking at it, man. It's on camera. I put on a lot of weight, right? And it's not till recently I've started dealing with that because I realized, once I made it to a lot of money, I'll answer your question in a roundabout way, but once I made a lot of money, I realized that, actually, there was a lot of pain left behind from suffering and struggling and losing my father young that I hadn't dealt with. And I was masked in the form of just not showing who I am, right? Yeah, right? Yeah. So, there was absolutely a form of struggling with that, man. There was a I don't know what else to say. There was a struggle associated with, the pretense before success, right? There is a level of like you recognize you don't know anything, but there's this big thing you want to go and achieve. How do I get there? What's the route? What's the fastest way from point A to point B, right? And realizing that the fastest path isn't even the answer, right? It's the journey that you got to become the person in the process, the identity that goes along with it, that truly fuels the end result. Right. So, yeah.
Do you feel like that pain that, of losing a father, I can't even imagine, right? Do you feel like you use that to then fuel and actually keep you focused on that goal of success? Then a lot of people victimizing themselves and having that legitimate event hold them back.
Yeah. There was definitely a victim story in the beginning. Right? I think I wanted to, for lack of better terms, I wanted to believe my own bullshit as to why it's not going to happen or I'm not going to have a great life or whatever. I think there is that form of grief that exists always. I think you're not human if you don't go through that. But then I recognize that, you know what, some of the greatest triumphs in the world and some of the greatest people in the world, they go through some of the biggest setbacks, whatever their version of a setback is. Right. Yeah. And when I started seeing that, okay, well, these people, they had a similar victim story that's, to them important. Well, then who am I to sit here and justify it?
Yeah. So, plus, I think in an interesting way, are you religious at all or
spiritual?
Spiritual. Okay. So
I played with religion a little bit, to be honest with you, trying to understand it and see if it sort of fit my fits the way I think. But I think spirituality was more in alignment with me because I didn't want to put a label on it. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I asked that because I think the more I do a lot of these podcasts and the more I talk to guys like you and even experiencing it myself, how you said, was that like a chip on your shoulder to kind of push hard and focus? In a weird way, you kind of, thankfully both of my parents are still alive, but I can I try to put myself in your shoes a little bit and reflect back from your perspective. Yeah. I feel like I've noticed that downfalls like that in moments like that are what's necessary to get you out of the rut that you're in.
Yeah.
Because it could have been that if that didn't happen, you would have never found the motivation to give a crap to really go out and do anything for yourself. You know?
Yeah. I think the big thing for me, dude, is kind of going back to where you asked about the focus part and just staying with it. I think when you realize how quick your life can change, snap a finger, it can really switch and the narrative can change, you start valuing your time differently. I think there's a version where you go down the victim path and you don't really value your time. But I think that the alternative is you actually start valuing your time and every second matters. Yeah. And kind of going back to the paradox of the weight gain, part of it was, you know what, you live once. I don't care. I'm just going to eat, enjoy, and indulge in an obscene amount of unhealthy pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. Where that has a consequence as well.
Sure.
Right? Does that make sense? it's kind of funny and it's a paradox.
Do you regret that at all or no?
Now I do.
Yeah.
Because now you're just
I'm just curious your perspective on it,
It's true. 100% I regret it now because now, I gotta do fucking work now, right? Fuck, now I gotta hit the gym. This guy, you see how fit he is. He's, he's taking care of my personal fitness too now. He's you gotta, eat less this and do more of this and do that. So
it's all in the diet, man. It's all in the diet.
Diet, and you know what, man? I almost feel like it's, you gotta lose X amount of pounds, but that's one part of it. The other part of it is fuck. What happened? I'm scared of the end result. If I'm being honest with you, I'm super scared of the end result.
Yeah, there's a lot of concerns. I had a buddy who he was over 300 at some point.
Okay.
And this guy, he went to Lebanon, lived for 1 year, came back 100 pounds lighter.
Jeez.
Right. And it was oh, what did you do? Because it was a crazy transformation.
Yeah.
Crazy transformation. What did you do? He was yeah, dude. After every single meal, because homeboy just had time on his hands, he would go for a walk, 30 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah.
After every single meal, lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
Came back, looked phenomenal, this and that, but he wasn't necessarily happy. And we're why, dude? And he lifts up his shirt.
Yeah.
And
loose
the
skin?
excess skin was just he
Yeah.
was just flapping around. I was whoa, dude. That's the wildest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could definitely see why you're scared of the end result.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's losing the pounds, but there's toning the body.
Yes.
Completely, two completely different things.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%. Yeah, dude. It's I think what it is, one of the things, so I'm uncovering a lot of the sort of the pains associated with why I went down the path of obviously, eating and kind of masking myself. But I think the reality is, I'm kind of scared of shit. Now I lose all this weight. I mean, I've lost a lot of weight since. You guys haven't seen me at my biggest yet. I was really big before. Okay. The end result. How am I going to feel that I can't hide behind that pain anymore? Because the reality is now you got to live your life, and now you're living the life that you always wanted to live, and you're there, right? To me, there is a level of accountability that when I show up for myself at that level, I don't have any excuse to experience pain anymore. It's weird. It's this weird thing. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah.
I feel like maybe
I don't know how to. Yeah.
You went through the whole thing of I'm feeling pain, so that's
Yeah.
why I'm
Yeah.
eating and I'm masking a whole bunch of stuff. Now that I'm assuming that you've gone through a lot of it, and it's in the past, and you've learned from it. Now it's like, what's your excuse?
Right.
Yeah, I think somebody else that we interviewed recently. His name's Shaw, great guy, and I think what you're getting to right now is like he would basically tell himself like, I have no right to feel sorry for myself.
Correct.
You know, like there's no reason. What's that going to do good for me? You know,
100%.
So he would just.
And that's what I'm uncovering right now, and that's what it is that it's working through a narrative of like such a deep-rooted, lots of grief and stuff that you haven't really processed. Yeah. I'm just like, there really is no benefit to staying this way.
I
right?
am curious though. So how close were you to your father?
Extremely close. In kind of like a Middle Eastern close, like Middle Eastern fathers, man, you mess around like. We all have.
But I will
right?
tell you, man. Like my dad's getting a little older. He's still very young, and I hope he lives a good long life. But when I think about it, like I'm like, man, I'd rather get hit left and right than lose him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like I can imagine myself one day being like, oh, I missed that. Like
Yeah.
you know,
I think I appreciate so much more like how tough he was with me as a kid.
Yeah.
I appreciate today.
Oh really?
Today I look back, I'm like, you know
You have
what?
kids or no?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
But I could imagine if I had a little son and if the son acted the way I did when I was a kid.
Beat the crap out of him.
It kind of, like, well, don't be your kids, but like get in line, right? Yeah.
I feel like everybody goes through like this phase where they're like, when they're getting beat, they're like, I'm never gonna beat my children when I grow old. And then like after a while, you're like, I'm gonna beat them. Sucks to suck.
Yeah.
Child abuse.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, we don't condone child.
Right.
Like any violence against children.
This
you know?
message is brought to you by child abuse.
Let me clarify. I'm gonna beat the crap out of
Chill.
Yeah.
Welcome to the pod, bro.
Thank you. We do
first time?
Yeah, this is great.
This is your first time, huh?
Yeah.
No, he goes. I gave him a ride, and he goes. I was like, "Hey, man, how many podcasts have you done?"
Yeah.
And he goes 3. And in my head, I was like, and then I tell him, I was like, "Oh, how you liking it?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's cool. Like, I'm getting used." In my head, I'm like, "Bro, we're about to give him a roller coaster of a ride." Like, it's such a free for all here. I mean, that's kind of what makes it cool, you know?
No, I love it. This is great.
I've already held back on a few things. I'll be honest with you.
Okay. Well, we can go into it if you want.
No. Let's keep this going. Okay.
A little
So,
professionalism.
All right.
so first off, I'm assuming that you started off with stocks before
Yes.
you got into real estate.
Yes.
Right. So, what inspired you to one, get into stocks, but then like who was along that way? What book did you read, or maybe who was that one mentor that you looked up to that you were like, I need to be like this person?
Yeah.
Who
What inspired me to
you?
get into stocks? Let's start with that one. Okay. So I had flown about 1,000 hours as a pilot, and I got my first sort of real job flying passengers. Okay. But what came along with that job was you're flying to mud strips, you're flying to the dirtiest places in Canada, okay? Like we're talking like the worst places. And after you're flying for 14, 15 hours, total workday, you get back to the hangar, you got to go and wash that plane, you got to strip it out, if there's anyone puked in the back, you got to wash it. It became a janitorial job, and the whole premise was if you want the keys in this career to actually make it, like to the top airlines or whatever, right? You got to get down, you got to do this dirty work, right?
You gotta go through the grind.
Yeah, and it was sort of like the dirtier side of flying airplanes. Nobody really talks about this. Like, most pilots that you see at the airlines, they have, like I call it, they have blood on their hands. Why I say that is because they've really earned their positions to get there. Most people, at least, okay? So when I recognized that, I was like, you know what? I don't want to ever have to do this shit to get some sort of advance in life. Like, I don't care about your stupid reference letter to go and do that great job. If this is the path to it, then for lack of better terms, fuck you. That's what it was. Like, but that was the rebel inside of me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, okay, well,
That's the Arab inside. Of you.
probably, yeah, like the Middle Eastern,
100% Middle Eastern, 100%.
yeah, and you know what? Yeah, that was there was probably an element of arrogance to that in the beginning because you're a young buck. No, you don't have anything to show for, right? So anyway, I realized quickly that obviously I'm not going to get along with many people this way because I'm not going to pay my dues the way that people expect me to pay my dues. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and become rich. Naive, but that was it. And when I started researching where do most people get rich from? Like, we're talking a lot of money. I'm not talking like, having a couple houses. I'm talking like having wealth to your name. It's the stock market. That's where the 1% hang out. There's a reason for that. There's a reason it works. There's a reason that the repetition of the markets work over and over and over. So that's what got me obsessed with the stock market. I didn't know anything about it, but that's where, I went into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you happen to go like into any sort of like mastermind, or do you
Nope.
take a course, or
No.
like how'd you learn such a complicated
Yeah.
area?
Was it trial and error?
Yeah, massive amounts of trial and error, but tracking
No,
it.
bro, no. He just woke up one day.
No.
No, baby. Hear me out. I'm dead ass. He woke up. He's like, I just know what to do.
That's crazy. I don't remember asking you. So, anyways, the reason why I'm asking is it trial and error is because at some point on your Instagram, you explained that you were like 100K in debt.
Yeah.
So was that part of the trial and error, or
Yeah.
was that previous debt?
No. That was debt. So I got a line of credit.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing to my name. I had a job and a credit score which qualified me to get money, right? And this was right after the 2008 financial crisis. So the banks were issuing debt because they had money to give out, right? So a young buck wants money to go and trade the stock market. Good luck. Here you go, right? They give me debt. Yeah, no, dude, I literally just started doing the constant degenerate things that people do in the stock market, buying and holding ideas, not selling, holding and hoping, thinking that my gut feeling was going to make me rich, as opposed to realizing that has nothing to do with the path to success in the markets, right? So one thing I did right, which, this is the thing I realized, that I was always constantly, I seemed to be behind the move. Whether it was to the downside or to the upside, I was constantly just too early. Where I would usually get, let's say if I was holding a stock, I was going in right now to go for the upside. I'm buying at 100, trying to get out at 150. Usually the thing would go to 90, take me out, and then go to 100, right? And I was realizing this repetitive pattern in my trades, that why am I constantly getting, for lack of a better term, stopped out before the move that I could have made money on happens? So I started tracking this because I'm getting obsessed about it. I started seeing that it had absolutely nothing to do with gut feeling. It had nothing to do with any sort of crazy idea that I had. It had all to do with everything that the companies talk about before they do those moves, and those are through public filings. So once I realized that, the game changed, because these companies are obligated to tell you what they're doing ahead of time.
So do you spend a lot of time studying?
That's what changed the game.
That's what changed the game.
Yeah.
Actually being smart about where the market's moving.
Yeah, and understanding it. And then later on, when I found success through that, kind of like I was saying in the car coming over here, then I got opportunities to go and start taking companies public through the formation of shell companies. And once you start seeing the market making, which is the entities that manipulate price action, and you work with them to create the market of the stock that people are buying and selling, you see the full circle side of the whole behind the scenes as to what the stock market is made up of. I always say this to people: stock market is nothing more than a marketing campaign designed to suck you in because you buy into people's and other companies' ideas. 99% of them fail.
It's when I think of the stock market, it trips me out.
Yeah, most people do.
No, because in my head, I was like, I was even on the way to pick you up. I was like, man, what the fudge is the stock market anyway? Because it's like a bunch of nothing. I don't just coming together and somehow creating money. And the fact that there's people out there like Elon Musk, for example, that can push out a tweet, change a whole market, dump a ton of money, and make a crap load off of it and screw other people over. It's like, to me, it's like, that is such a crazy system, but hey, good for the person who figures it out,
Yeah. So the stock market. So I'll give you there's two facets to the stock market. Okay. There is some really legitimate ideas out there. Let's say we're talking about the cure for cancer. Let's just talk about that, right? The fight for cure for cancer seems like a legitimate thing we should fund, right? That's a good idea.
Sure, yeah.
We should at least most people think we should fund, the solution to cancer.
I think that it exists, to be honest.
I tend to believe that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But
For the sake of the example,
but for the sake of the example, let's
sure,
just say that's what it is, right? You've got these companies that are researching and developing the response to cancer. Well, it makes sense to try to fund that idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say now the version number 2, I've got a great idea, man. I'm going to launch this podcast and it's going to go viral, and I have nothing to talk about because I'm actually, an introvert.
Yeah.
But hey, we're going to talk about planes, we're going to talk about rockets, we're going to talk about ships, and then people that are interested in that, let me buy into that stock because who knows? I think, ships are the best thing. And the reality is I have no business plan. I don't have anything legitimate that I'm bringing to market. And I take my private company to the public, sell a bunch of shareholders to buy my idea. Reality is I can't deliver on the business plan. My company fails. Everybody loses money. But in the process of raising money, I, the insider,
Pocketing a crap load.
there you go. I made my money, right? And that's what I learned when I started taking companies public, is that the idea rarely is the thing that matters. It's the business plan at the end of the day, right? And that's why, like, now when I get into the teaching space of teaching the markets to anybody who wants to learn trading, I'm like, you know what? Try to understand the company for what it is. What's the underlying value of the company? I don't care about the stock price. I care about the company. What are they up to?
Yeah.
If you can understand what the company's up to through public filings, what they're going to do in terms of their share price, and in terms of what they're doing for products, et cetera, now you can actually get into a thesis as to why something's a good hold or a good sell or a good short or a good long or whatever that you want to do with it.
So it's crazy. Like on that one side of the market, you could just be good at marketing yourself. You get a bunch of investors and have nothing to show for
Okay.
it.
So
Correct.
so now like you're doing your research on a company, right?
Yeah.
Say like someone like Apple, right? Actually, before I asked this question, now when you got into stock markets, were you more like a niche investor? Like, say, did you focus specifically on a specific industry that you knew, or were you more just from tech to pharmaceutical?
I chased hype, like most people. I chased whatever the big idea was.
Is that
right?
what got you into debt?
Yeah, I mean that's what I used debt, but when I started losing that money, because
Yeah.
I used debt to invest.
I mean,
right?
not like that, but like
Yeah.
when you started actually losing,
Yeah, the losing was as a result of chasing hype.
chasing the hype.
Right. And once I was taking companies public, I realized, oh yeah, the hype. I understand the hype now because people are buying into my dumping of shares as a person that's taking the company public.
Because I know like when like
You know?
stocks, not
Yeah.
stocks, I'm sorry, but when like crypto was just going absolutely crazy, a lot of people many times said that if you heard about it on the news,
Yeah.
you're too late.
Sometimes, not all the time, because the news in itself can be part of a bigger story, right? So oftentimes, like one of the things I focus on now, and they don't happen all the time. These opportunities aren't going to be there daily, but let's say a company comes out, they're going to solve something cool. The world needs it. I don't know. Let's say this AI revolution, just to give you an example, right? So an AI revolution. The company comes out, says, we're going to solve AI revolution in the medical space, right? And then all of a sudden, this company gets $100 million funding. That's part of the story of what's going to happen in the stock. The $100 million funding is going to give them research and development capital to go on research and do more AI product and stuff. So that news isn't necessarily a bad piece of news. That's part of a bigger story because $100 million likely makes them profitable 6 months to a year. Good hold now, good sell later when the big PRs come out. Yeah, when the big PRs come out about the AI revolution that they've made, sure, now it's too late. But it's so important that there's a meticulous set of catalysts that are actually not bad. They're actually very good news pieces that are good to enter into a stock for a 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 12-month hold.
So how do you
Yeah.
position yourself to stay ahead of the information?
Yeah, that's a good one. A lot of my focus now comes down to insider. They're called SEC Form 4s. What they really are is they're insider filings. What are the insiders up to? What's the CEO doing? What's the CFO doing? Are they holding shares, buying shares? Are they selling shares? Because oftentimes that's a very efficient way to figure out what their immediate thought process is as to the value of their company. So let's say I'm an insider, right? I'm a CEO, right? Of course, I'll have some stock options. I'll take some of my salary that way. But if I'm dumping a bunch of shares as the CEO of a company, that's not a good sign, is it?
That's going to ring up some flags.
Right.
Yeah. So you study the behavior of the execs of the company?
That's the first place I go to. Then the second place I go to is who the institutional holders are. Because so we're talking like the big institutions on Wall Street. Like, what are their holdings? Why are they holding it? And why are they buying and selling? Because if they start dumping, then there's something going on. And usually when you start digging into the filings, you start seeing the reasons as to why they'd be dumping. So much, it's behind the scenes. Everything is behind the scenes. I find there's like the misrepresentation of the stock market, especially because of the pandemic, is that, there's this sort of like this, like this myriad of retail traders that came out. They started drawing lines and showing you, if they follow this line, and if you do this, then you should be able to make money.
I was watching a lot of those TikToks, by the way.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, because it works sometimes, it hooks people the wrong way. It works sometimes, but those sometimes is not enough to sustainably grow and become rich. It's just a way for you to make two quick, bucks from it. And if it so happens to be that you had a big position, you might make a lot of money. But that's not how it works. If it was that easy, then we could teach everybody to drive on green and stop on red, and there is no market anymore. Right?
So I'm not a big fan of the question I'm about to ask, but I ask it just out
Tell
of
me.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like speed to like $1 million, we're making $1 million, right? In your world.
Yep.
If I'm a complete noob, how long do you think it'll take?
With
But I have the right resources, help, yes.
With help, you could probably get there. If you start with, let's say, the minimum PDT, which is the pattern day trader rule, amounts $25,000. Okay. You could probably get there in about 3.5 to 4 years if you are consistently studying, you're getting better, and you're reflecting on the losses and you're managing the losses. There's so many caveats that goes into
Yeah,
this.
for
Like,
sure.
if
I mean,
say
just
3
like
4
anything.
years,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's doable. Like it's way quicker than holding and hoping a retirement fund for 30 years. That's why I'm obsessed in saying that this game works, but you got to get obsessed with the right things.
And then another question. So like when you actually start making money and you start banking cash, how stable is the consistency of it?
Like once you have a lot of money to
like is it always coming back down to you? How do you systemize this and like step away from it? And
Yeah, there's multiple ways, right? I think there comes a point where trading in itself can just become a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't really want to be sitting there all the time and buying and selling stocks, there comes a point where you need to transition that to passive, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier, right? You got to put that money into something that makes you passive income.
Like dividends or something like
Dividends is one way, or you just real estate, which is the game that I got a part of. Or you can just actually invest your money with like private wealth companies that'll give you 10, 20, 30% returns. They'll trade your money for you, right? And you get money that way. But as far as like how do you keep up with it and like how do you keep going, I think you decide what that number is. Like let's say I'm gonna make $10 million. That's the number, right? And on 10 million, if I put that all on passive, that's 10% a year. So you look at $1 million a year, just passively being made for you, right? So the path to 10 million, there's gonna come a point where you sometimes can't put in a massive position size into a stock because it's just not that liquid yet, right? So there is restrictions on how fast the money grows after the first few $1 million. But getting to like sort of, I say $3 to $5 million in the micro cap world where you have hundreds of millions of shares traded every day, it's a doable thing if you learn the behind the scenes of what those companies are up to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you is it a thing to like hire other people to trade on your behalf?
There's like prop firms and stuff too. You can
But like not like
Yeah.
you like for your own employees, like take it as like a business and
You could. So there's a way. So one thing that you could do, and this is one thing actually, a spin-off of that we're currently doing with what I'm doing as well with my own students is, yes, you could have people technically trade your money. Like here, you come into my account, you know what you're doing, right? So go and trade for me, right?
well, I mean,
do
if
that,
you have
right?
like SOP set up or like training set up, I'm just curious, like if it's like a systemizable thing that
It is systemizable, but so much of trading has got to do with the individual that's pulling the trigger on those trades, right? And what they understand of the stock, of the story, of the share structure, who the holders are, all that stuff. That you almost develop your own personality trading, right? Do I put it to an SOP? Yes, but my emotional triggers are not the same as yours.
That's true,
right? And not the same as his, right? So we're going to think and perceive things differently. And as a result, it's a very hard thing to systematize. That's why I'm a believer of don't teach people to draw lines on charts. Don't teach that stuff because that's not what works. What needs to work is you got to find your own edge in the markets. And how you find that is understand how the markets work. If I can teach you how the markets work, you'll find which corner of it makes sense to you to make money from.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, because then I feel like you probably read a lot then, huh?
I used to. Now I just use like the Control F feature on my keyboard or
Chat GPT,
or AI. AI helps. AI is phenomenal for this stuff because like AI helps. Like if you know to ask the right question on what you're looking for, AI will pull it up right away.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal. Yeah.
So I've always been interested. So I know this may go either side, but when it comes down to stock, I know you've been talking about like the long hold and stuff like that. Yeah. That may not necessarily be like the play for every single time. But from your experience, short term / meaning like day trading and stock options and so on, would you rather choose that, or would you rather choose long term, long play? For the most part, I know it varies.
No, it's good. It's a good question. I think it depends on the individual person's goals. Like, dude, if you want to be young and thrive with money, like, I think the long term game that's not the game. That's not the right way to go, because at least, you know, if the stock market's how you're going to make your money.
Yeah.
Right. I think that the best way to go is try to find the fastest way, however avenue that is, whether that's you do, you know, stock market or some other business thing, right? You could do drop shipping, Amazon, whatever, right? Find the fastest way to an 8-figure capital, right? Because when you get even the first base metric of an 8-figure capital is $10 million, you put that on passive, you're living $1 million a year lifestyle. It's 180K, 90K a month lifestyle, right? That for most people keeps their head more than above water to be able to live and thrive how they want, right? And then they'll eventually realize the answer is not in the toys. It's not in all the extravaganza. Eventually the answer is in the self and how you grow and who you become in the process and how you become with money, right? So there's a whole holistic side to it eventually, right? But to kind of answer your question, I think that if you're looking for a calm, peaceful life for the majority of your life, delaying that gratification through the stock market for 30, 40 years just because of safety, of having safe, investment techniques as opposed to learning the game, which is more risky up front. I'd rather the risk up front as a young guy, young girl, whatever, make a lot of money and then put that on passive and then go and do what you want to do. That's my point of view.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I think this is a perfect time for us to transition, right? So you got stocks,
Yep.
You made your money. Now you're like, okay, what's the next play?
Mm-hmm.
So then from there you thought about the real estate market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, initially I was like, oh, I'm retired now. I don't have to do anything, right? So I was kind of talking to it with you, right? I was saying, vegetation became a thing. You just lay there, don't have to do anything. You can be lazy, right? Literally, you don't have to do much, right? There's no more hustle. So there was I call it, it's kind of pathetic, but it is a term I think people need to be aware of. There comes a point of wealth depression. I call it wealth depression because people don't realize that once there's no hustle anymore, what am I doing? So I call it like a rebirth almost. Like once you cross a point where you don't have to work anymore, you have to figure out what you're here for.
You lost your why.
Yes, that's it. Because now you have the thing you were looking for. Right?
Isn't that interesting?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy how life works.
It's insane, man.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, so to answer your question, it wasn't immediately going to real estate. So when I made, my first set of millions, I stopped flying. I stopped drumming. I started being this guy that's just like, oh, I can just do what I want when I want. Like, I don't care. Life has no rules anymore, right? Ergo, life has no rules, right? But the point, you get my point, right? And that's a quick way to an early death, right? Like, that's how that goes, right? So, literally.
Did you go through a splurge phase?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you first started making,
yeah, of course.
What can you share with us, like your dumbest purchase?
My dumbest purchase.
Yeah.
Oh man, what would be the dumbest one? The dumbest one, I don't know. I think I spent it was like $200K on a trip to Dubai or something. It was something stupid.
For how long? Like, was it like 10
it was
days
for
or something?
no, it was like for 15 days. Like the Emirates first class tickets. I don't know if you guys know.
Yeah, like 20
They're
grand.
20, 30K a piece,
Yeah.
right? So my girlfriend at the time, but this is my fiance now. Yeah, I just splurge on it. We stayed at the craziest hotels in the Burj and just stupid money spent on stupid stuff that ultimately, once I did that, I was like, okay, well now I've done that. What was the point of that? What was the point,
just so
right?
you could do it?
Yeah, but it's kind of like, you realize.
15 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, 200 racks. So that's like what? That's like 20. It's like almost 15, 20 G's a day.
Yeah.
Sounds like my trip to Dubai, dude.
Bro, this guy probably paid like $200 for his ticket.
I actually did, bro. I used my points.
Now that's smart. I like that. Yeah, and you know what? Then you realize really quickly that you're seriously a nobody with just a few $1 million. You just enter you're a small fish in a way bigger pond.
Oh,
now,
yes.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Who are you trying to be spending $200K even in 15 days? There's someone that's spending, 10 million today. And
they don't even looking at it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? So
Insane.
yeah. So anyway, so that's why, so I had that phase. But ultimately, coming back to what you were saying, the real estate thing, it wasn't until I stopped flying, I stopped drumming, I stopped doing all that stuff, right, when I got into money. And I realized that, this ain't the life I want to have, right? This isn't what I want to be about. This isn't, who I am, et cetera, et cetera. So, I realized that, you know what? The biggest thing for me is when I saw that I had monetary success, my friends around me, like they take notice, right? Like, what the why are you rolling around this way now, right? Like 200K in Dubai, like, right? Stuff like that. They're like, what's going on? Like, what's happened to you? And then I realized that there was a few of them that were interested in what I had done in the stock market, right? Because most of it I kept under wraps. I talked about the stock market, but, I didn't really talk about my results with anybody. I didn't really feel like that was a place to show off or anything. And money is such an emotional topic for most people. They don't really, it's kind of weird. It triggers people. If they find out you're doing really well, they almost don't want to know about it, right? It's kind of strange. Obviously, depending on the circle that you're in. The circle that I was in. There was a few of them that were interested in what I had done. And they're like, hey, can you teach me? And I said, yeah, sure. So I took it upon myself. This is around 2018, 17 and 18, where I started showing them the process that I've used to trade. And they started finding success. And then I was like, okay, so there's something here. There's something that I can pass on, right? And then probably in a weird, self-fulfilling way, I felt like, oh my God, that's kind of cool that I can show someone how to make money and they didn't know anything. And so I took that further and further and further. And it wasn't until the pandemic where I was like, you know what? I'm going to roll this out full tilt. And I'm going to see if I can come in a very difficult space full of a lot of nonsense, a lot of claims, a lot of BS, and try to be the one that that's the difference maker and it's real. That's going to actually show you the reality to what the stock market is and how it ebbs and flows like. So I kind of got into the space of teaching this game, of teaching what's worked for me. I will never tell somebody what to do. I'll just tell them, listen, this is what I do. This is what I'm looking for. This is why I look for what I look for. Look for the same thing. See if you can see what I see, right? And we're like, yeah, I see it. I'm like, okay, cool. So then this is what I would do in this case. And like, okay, they take the position. They see that the exact same thing that I talked about that was going to happen ends up happening. Like, oh my God, is that what it is? Yeah, that's what it is. That's how this game works. That's how the price manipulations happen. So yes, I started getting into the game of teaching. And then all the sort of accumulated wealth that was there went into real estate. And I realized quickly with real estate, it's a pain in the ass. It's a really big pain in the ass because, okay, so now you have your money tied up into these properties, and you have tenants in some cases they're pre-built investments and stuff that you're buying for the future that you're monetize. And like the amount of monetary tie-up and the need for lawyers to get deals done and mortgages sometimes if you want to go in big sense, like let's say you want to get like you have $5 million cash, you want to get a $10 million place. Well, you still have a mortgage need, right? So having to satisfy financing needs when I could just take that same money and just work with it in the market or have it work with me passively just by being in a fund or working with like a private wealth, private banking. It's sort of, I got more interested in reducing my real estate portfolio, right? So now I'm down to only like having 6 properties. I don't have many properties anymore. Most of my money is just being worked for me in the markets, or I work it.
So you sold, I'm assuming just like you sold courses.
So I hate calling it courses because it's such a horrible space.
So,
man.
but like what I got from what you're trying to say is that like you're selling people your lens.
Correct.
Right.
What I see.
What
and
you
why
see.
It works the way it does.
Correct.
Yes.
You sold them exactly how you see the stock market. So like that lens, I mean, it's interesting because like, as you said, there are many like TikToks. There's a whole bunch of BS that's out there, right?
Yeah.
Do this and do this and do this and do this, and you're going to be successful. But with the real estate specifically, what do you think was your biggest hurdle beginning? I'm sorry, in the beginning.
To get into it. I think the biggest hurdle was like once you're in the real estate game, you have, a massive list of obligations, man. As an owner, you have tax bills, you have upkeep, you have maintenance, you have tenants' needs, you have things that break down. There's so many things that goes into it, right? Where for me, I was like, okay, well, maybe it was just a bad investment deal. Like maybe the first one I bought wasn't the best real estate deal. You get smarter, you buy a better property next time. But then you realize that the problem doesn't really go away. It just becomes a different problem. It surfaces itself as a different problem. So to me, like scaling through real estate felt like a much slower game, much more liabilities because now you're involving people. It's like my money and people as opposed to just my money and my brain in the markets, right? So, yeah, I wasn't too interested in keeping that up, to be honest with you, man. Like I wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't my style.
So why still keep the 6 properties that you have?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a good question. So any sort of property that I have now is more so I look at emerging markets that actually there exists a decent X return on the investment, right? So to me, right now, the markets that I'm invested into are markets that there's newcomers coming in. There's a lot of immigration coming in. Interest rates, when they drop, these are markets that will blow up, right? And I see a way of making an ROI on it that is worth not having to work for it like trading. Does that make sense? Because you've done your research. You're just letting your money sit there. It's a longer term play and you can accept the risk. Even if it doesn't work out, most of your capital's still in place. So you can pull it out and you can leverage against it and make money on it again. Like it's no big deal. But it's not like 50 properties. It's not 100 properties. You know what I mean? It's 6 of them, right? So it's manageable. It's not a big pain in my ass, right? It's there. It's on the sidelines. It's one of the many things that I do, right? But it's not the entirety of it.
Because it's crazy that you had that kind of experience, because many people who say they own a business and say they're selling cars and so on, they get that money for their first property, their second property, third property. They're thinking like, all right, forget the business that I was in. Yeah. I'm going to eventually, my long-term play is property. Right. And then they're going to move up. Where your experience was like you made that money through stock. Yeah. You got into property, to real estate, which is typically the very long, like the end game, right? The end result for many people. Yeah. Then you're like, nah, I'm gonna go back to what I like.
Yeah, I like liquidity. I think that's the issue. Right?
I mean, real estate's great for like taxes too, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, there is a game to it, which is why I think like once you have a lot of money, you should be a part of it. I just don't think. To me, it's not the scale game that I'm interested in.
You fell in love with the you fell in love with the stock game. You didn't fall in love that much with the real estate game.
No. To me, people are complicated. And if you're going to have 200 units, and that's a lot of problems, man. That's a lot of problems that could land on your shoulder. And you have to, it's like, it becomes a business within itself that you have to have a management of this. It becomes a whole sort of like an archetype of a setup that you have to be interested in running. It becomes a real estate business. And I'm just not interested in that. I like having my own property, my sort of vacation property. That's the things that I enjoy for the terms of toys. And then the rest is just going to be part of a much bigger investment play that some of it sits in real estate, long term.
Yeah. I mean, so like I know that you live out in Canada. Yeah. Now, the majority of the properties that you own, would you say like they're stuck in Canada?
Yeah, pretty much in Canada, man.
That's I was going to ask you, which states are you invested in? Yeah. But that was like, he's Canadian.
Yeah.
Right?
So I mean, in the beginning, once you have an overflow, the interest was worldwide. Like the real estate interest for me was worldwide. Like we're looking at markets like Dubai and stuff like that too. But once I realized that, no, I want my money closer to home, close to what I'm doing, I just kept it local to where I'm at. Yeah.
I love that. I'm gonna give you props, man. You're definitely living life on your own terms. Yeah, which is cool. Yeah. And I think what you also realize too, there's so many different ways to make money. Yeah. And man, like the biggest like breakthrough for me, like was like recognizing that like there is not one way to make like $1, right? Because like growing up for me, like I used to see all these rich people be like, oh, like how do you get rich? You ask like that question of like how do you make money? Yep. But you don't realize that like the world operates. It's in such a. It's not black and white. There's a lot to it. And I've seen a lot of people who are like you. You actually remind me of a good friend of mine, but who are more like, just live life more on like the free end, right? And then, guys like, I don't know, like myself, I'm more like operational. Like we were talking about this in the car, where like I actually enjoy like the process of having so many things going on and the workload and all that stuff. So, and it's cool because the world out there fits both. I've never touched stocks in my entire life. Yeah. I have never even thought of it. Like,
dude, I touched stocks and I got burnt like $7,000.
Oh, really?
I swear it was like through. I think it was like through Tesla or something like that. I forgot the stock, but it was through like they were going to announce like the Cybertruck. Okay. And it was supposed to be the biggest news. Like they're gonna release it, right? And then Elon, your boy, was like. Nah. And then the stock was like, nah. Yeah. So I was like, all right, cool. Stocks.
Yeah. That's but But see that, if I could just expand on that, right? Like, dude, that is a standard narrative. Like, because how do we get people to buy into something, release something exciting? Right?
That's so crazy, man. The manipulation of markets.
I think it's psychology, though. Let me tell you why.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, cool, yeah.
let me go into it. I'll
Would
tell
you
you why.
consider yourself a capitalist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
He moved from Sweden to
Yeah.
Let me phrase this in a different way. I'm definitely a capitalist because I believe that you need to have, a form of development. Okay, but where I kind of slide a little bit more to the left is I think that there exists almost like an obligation to make sure no one's left behind. That's kind of like the military mentality. It's like no man left behind. It's like, okay, if I figure something out, cool. I'll give you a bit of a handout so you can survive and not starve, but then let me help you so you don't starve anymore.
Yeah.
That's the sort of lefty side.
Well, that's cool.
guess,
I mean,
right?
like,
so yeah.
That's kind of how, like I said in the car, like, it's like why I work, for example. It's just
Yeah.
like to provide for those around me,
Yeah.
And I think as simple as that is, that's a very honorable way of living life.
Yeah.
You know?
So definitely who would say a capitalist? Yeah, definitely capitalist.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I think there exist elements of socialism in what I do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think like the unfortunate reality though is like it's very honorable of you wanting to help out other people and make sure that they don't go starving and so on through teaching them experience, not like just you're giving them handouts, right? Like, oh, here's $100, here's $1,000 or anything else. You're trying to teach them that, but like one thing I personally learned throughout my life, and correct me if I'm wrong,
No, tell me. Yeah.
is I learned that not many people want to be saved, right?
Correct.
Like they want handouts, they want this. That's why I personally I'm so over the whole thing of people going up to people like, oh, how do you get rich?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not going to follow it.
No.
Like 99.999%, they're not going to follow exactly. You could put them on game. You could tell them, hey, look, A through Z, do this, you're going to get rich.
Mm-hmm.
They probably might go up to maybe B or C.
Yeah.
And they're like, nah, I'm fine.
You're so right.
You could even give them money and watch how it gets spent.
Yeah, they're gonna lose it.
You can give them money.
You guys are so right. I'm a firm believer of that, by the way. Like, you can give the blueprint to someone, and they'll still manage a way not to execute it, right? This is like, someone asked me about what my point of view on homelessness is, right? Which is a really interesting topic, because I was on the verge of becoming homeless. My dad died, in Canada. Like, breadwinner, we're 2 weeks in. Like, we know nobody. Like, it was pretty bad, okay? And it's a paradox, because anytime, like, I do sort of donations for homeless endeavors, right? It usually comes side by side of education. Like, I don't just give handouts. Like, for example, if I'm just giving, let's say, food to a homeless person, I usually try to say, hey, dude, you got 2 minutes? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Of course I got 2 minutes, right? I'm sorry, but it's the truth, right? They have 2 minutes.
Do you got Wi-Fi and like Robinhood or something?
Yeah, but seriously. So then but the point I'm trying to make is I run to like a local bookstore alongside the handout for the food or the money or what I'm going to give them, and I give them 2 pieces of literature. Okay, you might be curious what they are, but I'm like, you know what? Here's to live today, but here's so you don't need me again.
That's a cool way of doing
Right?
it. Yeah.
That's how I address people.
What are the 2 pieces?
The books? Yeah. So the first one is Mindful Millionaire. It's by Lisa Peterson. The next one is called How Come This Idiot's Rich and I'm Not? It's a fantastic book, okay? And put it on Amazon. Yeah, it's a fantastic book, because what it does is it breaks down the lens of how your own ego and your own victim story, like we were talking about sooner, is the root cause of why you're not getting it. And that idiot, with not much understanding, but a little bit of naive action, end up becoming what you wanted to become. It's interesting. It's an interesting paradox.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of homeless people could actually benefit from that.
Yeah. Bounce off his point.
Yeah,
Like, and actually I struggle to show empathy to people who ask questions like that now.
Yeah.
It's hard, because I kind of like, especially like, because I work out a lot. So like a huge question I get all the time is like, oh, how do you get fit?
Right.
And in my head, I'm like,
I'm fit.
no, it's not that. No, like it's not. No, I don't even think about myself. No, it's in my head. I'm like, it's a pretty simple.
Yeah.
Like someone told me this a long time ago. Like, one of my mentors was like, the execution of business is simple. It's the emotional management throughout the journey that's complicated.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Right. Yeah. So like, because if you sit down and you go, hey man, here's what you got to do to make money, X, Y, Z. Like when I first started my agency, I took a coaching program and it kind of just taught me everything, and I literally, I remember like my first month, I think we pulled in like 50K. Right. So like, I took the action. It worked. Cool. Wow. That's,
Yeah.
And then like,
Yep.
it's crazy to me too. Like where I meet some people who like, I've had some friends who like, take some advice that, like they either hear from me or from the podcast or whatever, and they go apply and they come back and they're like, oh, it worked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, dude, if you go work out and you like eat healthy, you're going to get fit. Or if you go and you put in the effort, like something's going to happen.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people like, get focused so much on like, oh, what if I fail? What if I fail? What if I fail? That's such a wrong question to ask. Because like the world doesn't work like that. Like the world doesn't work like, oh, you're a failure, you're successful. Like it doesn't like. There's so much up and down and side to side that you're gonna have to go through. I think if you're able to stick it out as long as possible, that's what will increase your chances of actually succeeding.
Well, yeah, I don't remember exactly who said this, but it kind of goes along the lines of this. But ultimately, like, if you don't try, you're guaranteed to fail. So you may as well at least try.
Yeah, for sure.
You miss 100% of your shots,
Right? Yeah, like you may as well. Yeah, exactly.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a quote once. It was like, what did I say? Like working a lot or like working towards your dreams is hard, but not achieving your dreams is also hard.
Yeah.
Right, and like so, like choose your hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Choose the price that you want to pay, right?
Straight up.
Yeah.
And it's
I love
funny.
that.
I really believe like there is no such thing as a loss.
I actually believe that.
I really do believe that. Like it's something that over the years I've started to really like affirm and see in my life. I don't view anything as a loss. I see it all as a necessary component in life to be able to get me to the vision I want to build.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I hope maybe you've gone through this, but like you'll like envision. Actually, you just said you did. You'll envision certain things and then you get them. And you're like, oh, whoa, what the heck? Like, I have, I have it,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Did you have like a favorite thing that you wanted to like purchase and you went out and you got it the first thing when you started?
Yeah, I mean, dude. I mean, I grew up and again, it was probably a little bit of like envy being like this poor kid in Sweden, right? But like, I had a friend in school and his dad had this beautiful Porsche 911, right? So for me, the coolest thing that I thought at least that I purchased was when I got my yellow 911 Carrera GT4, man. When I got that, oh my God, I was just like, I did this. But then that lasted for maybe about 6 months. Once I drove the living hell out of it, okay, well, there's something faster too, and I don't know. You start seeing it through a different lens.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
My point is though is like when you realize that whatever you had envisioned that you thought one day was so hard to achieve and so impossible and so far fetched, you have it out in front of you. You go like, I know you say you don't, you're not religious, but like for me, from my perspective, I go like, oh wow, like God has always had my back. Yeah. And so like if I just realize that and I recognize that, I could just chill and kick back and just do my work and do my effort and keep doing the work every single day, but recognize that whatever I have in my head, it's gonna happen. Like no doubt. The only reason why it won't is because if I stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Can I ask a question now?
Yeah.
Do you think your visions, are they fed to you or are they self?
I think they're fed to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I tend to believe the same thing too. I think that I think our brain is part of a communication force that obviously I don't think we fully understand yet. Maybe with this Neuralink that Elon's bringing out, we'll understand more about it or whatever it is, right? But I do think that like your brain, it comes into constant opportunity. And it's just whether you pay attention to whether the thing is an opportunity or if it's just your bad mindset for not seeing that opportunity, right? It's kind of like this is now popular going around all over internet right now, but it's like, oh, focus on a red car. Well, if I pay you $50 for each red car, are you gonna tell me how many red cars you saw, right? As opposed to if you didn't have that pretext, you would probably, I don't know, maybe I saw 10 cars, maybe I saw 15. But when there's obligation to pay attention to that thing, you look for that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So, yeah, if your mind is in this sort of field of constant intelligence is what I call it, if you listen to it, I think you're right, man. I think you actually start forming the visions that make sense to you. And if you actually partake in solving those things that need to be solved in your mind, dude, you could solve some of the greatest things in the world.
It's a trip. It's a trick because you realize like that's really how life works. Like it seriously is a matter of just listening to your intuition and doing the work and then seeing it come into fruition. Yeah. That's life. Like even like when you look at it from a religious standpoint, like God created us so that we go through that journey so that we understand the value of things so that when like if you believe in heaven or hell, wherever you end up, you realize that I got here for a reason, right? Yeah. So like I really think like if you follow the natural natural sequence of events of how life works. You plant a seed, over time becomes a tree.
Yeah.
You recognize that even humans work like that, and your life works like that. And you don't trip out about whether or not it's happening now.
Yeah.
Like, you'll get really far, and it'll happen a lot faster than you ever thought.
100%.
Like, and like you said, it'll change like this. I will never forget it. I went, I think, 4 years completely broke in debt, like trying to figure it out. And then 1 month, like literally in 30 days, 50K came
Wiped
in.
it all out.
And I was just like, what the heck? Wiped
Yep.
out everything, you know?
100%.
And that 1 month, I think it I think it like winded up in 2 weeks. So like really technically the money making was in 14 days. Right.
Yeah.
So like, and I've heard of so many stories. I know guys like you, like, you know, similarities, like of like even stories of people who were like, oh, we were to our last bill and couldn't figure out how to make rent, and something boom pops up because they stuck through it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer.
I believe in that too, man.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah,
I really do.
I also think, you know, to add on to that, I also think God speaks to you in interesting ways. Because I'll give you an example. I know this might sound to some people a little crazy, but I had a friend of mine recently hit me up, tell me about a dream that he saw of me in it doing something certain in a certain area, and he explained it a certain way where I was like, holy whoa, what, dude, that's crazy. That's exactly what I've always envisioned myself doing in 10, 15 years. Like,
Wow.
whatever he told me that activity was, I was like, I have never told anyone that.
Wow.
That's a vision only me and my vision board knows. How did you like? And so I don't take those. I don't take that lightly.
No.
I really, like, when he told me, he made my day. I was like, dude, you know what? Like, because I was stressing about a lot of things with work, and
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Like, dude, just this is my sign. Just relax.
I do think this intelligence that you speak of, so God or
Yeah.
whatever you
Sure,
believe in,
sure,
right?
yeah.
I keep calling it intelligence. Just call it whatever you want.
It's the CIA.
Yeah. It's the alien CIA, right? Yeah. I do think it speaks through opportunities, and more importantly, it speaks through people,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it's very. How do I word this? I think this could be hard for atheists to understand, right? Because they believe everything finishes once it's done, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the things that I can only speak to my personal experience, and you as well, and you guys as well, right? But like the things that I've come across in my life, I have a really hard time chalking it all up to coincidence. I don't see it that way,
Yeah.
right? So many examples like that where like you're down to the last moment of something, and just something pops up, and it's like, wow, that's my lifeline to the
what was
next
I even
thing.
worried about? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly, and it kind of
yeah.
creates this thing. If I could just kind of riff off of this for a second,
Sure,
you guys
sure.
finish it however you want. But
Yeah.
so the other day I came across someone, and I talked a little bit about a recent trip that I did. We'd spent 100K to go away for 5 days, but this is different now. Okay, but like it was different now. Okay, and they're like, how do you justify being so irresponsible spending money? And it really hit me. I was just like, oh shit, this person's really triggered by me having spent this kind of money in a few days. And then I took a few seconds and I was like, what's irresponsible spending if you understand how to make money? Where does the limitation truly lie?
Yeah.
Right? Where is the worry if you understand how to make it?
Yeah.
So where the conversation went to eventually was, if you actually have the skill set to make money, that's what kills the worry of finances. It's not the money itself anymore. Like, because dude, I could cut anybody. Okay, I'll give you a check for $5 million. Are you going to stop worrying? My belief is if you don't know what to do with that, truly don't know what to do with it, anybody can put in real estate. But if you don't truly know what to do with that, you're going to be worried even more because it's a bigger lump sum to lose.
Well, I also think you're gonna end up in an even deeper hole.
I agree with.
Because like I give you $5 million, give you $5 million, you're gonna be
Yeah.
like, what the hell do I do with this? Or you might even go spend it, and all of a sudden you have expenses to live this lavish life, and you don't know how to make it.
Yeah.
So,
And that's why I come to
agree.
the point of like, when you get to the point of you have a process that you understand how that money game works in your life, and it could be different for everybody, right? Tied in with what you talked about with, I don't have to worry about anything anymore, right? Because there's like sort of a bigger picture. There's like an intelligence around me that's protecting me as well. Once you sort of tap those two things together, which is why I call myself spiritual more than anything else, is, that's where I think the highest form of mastery exists when it comes to not worrying about money anymore. Is when you can combine spirituality, religion, God, whatever you call it, with the skill set that, you've developed. Where's the worry?
Yeah,
What's
I feel too like I'm,
You know?
and this is just an opinion. I think recently I started to even believe that worrying about money is probably the lowest form of energy
Correct.
a human being is ever or should ever be at. So like, it's not why God created you. It's not what you're meant to do. That's not your focus. Like, you're not supposed to worry about that because it's really not in your control. Like, no matter like what anyone believes, right? Like, at the end of the day, we can all agree that like whatever money you make, it's the control you have is like you got to go out there and you got to hustle. But there's tons of stories of guys who did the same thing, worked as hard as you did, and made nothing. Right. So like there is like both ends to it. Okay. So you got to I feel like too, recognizing that like I'm gonna call it coincidence, but there are certain things that have to kind of come into play for success to occur to an individual. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like making money is harder or keeping it is harder?
Oh, definitely keeping it, I think.
Yeah, managing it and stuff
yeah,
like that.
I think keeping it, because I think money is, money is probably your ultimate pathway to power and influence.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right? If you think about the highest form of money, right? It's all about, what can I influence and what can I get done and how can I make things more efficient to serve me. But I think once you flip that script around, like I was saying earlier, like, looking at through more of a, okay, no man left behind, no girl left behind mentality, right? Then how you keep your money and how you end up spending it becomes the thing that it lifts up everybody around you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So to go back to what you're saying, the reason I think it's harder to keep it is because if you don't have yourself figured out and you don't have a lot of the sort of triggers figured out that create weakness in you as a person, right? Then power and temptation is a very dangerous mix, you'll have a lot of when you have a lot of money.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
So that's why I think keeping it's harder. I think making it literally anyone can get a blueprint and make money. Right? Yeah. That's why.
I don't think many people understand that though, because having a liquid, say 50 G's, 100 G's, and it's just liquid. You can just pull it out anytime. You can purchase something or stocks or anything else. I feel like making the 100,000 or making the 50,000, that's its own struggle, but it's a different kind of almost disappointment, right? When you have that money and now you're like, great, what am I going to use it on?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Of course, you're trying to be as responsible as possible. You're not just trying to spend on a nice shiny object that's just going to lose a lot of money. What would you advise now a person that's in that position? They're like, all right, I have a goal of 50,000 within X amount of time. I finally reached it. I'm there. Yeah. Right. What is that next step that you advise that person to take? The person that now has that money to invest.
Learn what to say no to. Because there'll be so many opportunities that you want to say yes to. So I think more of what ends up happening is as you come into more power and influence and money and all that sort of stuff where you can have those things, so many opportunities start presenting themselves. So many people start coming around you. So many things. Well, you should do this. You should do that. You got to become so educated on, okay, what vision is true to me? What is it I want to do? What is the nth degree that I'm going for? And only say yes to opportunities that are in line with that value. That's what my answer would be to something like that. Yeah.
I'm wondering, man, with your whole move to Canada at such a young age, do you feel like it was kind of an advantage because you didn't necessarily grow up with a lot of people, so you didn't have a lot of people to distract you, so you're able to stay focused that when you did go into the stock game, you were just able to hone in on it in a way that just excelled you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a combination of that, and it was the timing of my father's passing, because it was very isolating, right? I mean, you're new in a country, your father passes, you're not in the mood to make friends at that point, right? Like you're right. You'd rather be a loner at that point, right? So, absolutely. I think not having a lot of people around the beginning allowed 100% for not a lot of opinions of like, don't do this, it's wrong, blah, blah, blah. There wasn't much of that. It was just me and the blinders, and I just went for it. Yeah. And my mother, God bless her soul, like, she was like, whatever you do, I support you. So that was her mentality. So I was very lucky to have that.
And I was curious. At some point or another, you went through the grind, right, with the whole stocks. And I'm assuming it seems like you reached a point where you decided, all right, I don't need to work as hard or do as much research or this and that. I can chill back and then, like you said, have a certain investment amount kind of just, bring you in like 10% a year or whatever. What kind of stopped you from saying, hey, I've made, let's say, for example, 8 figures. Mm-hmm. How about I keep grinding to make 9, 10 figures? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of like gave you that kind of like that sign to where it's like, all right, I want to chill now, even though you knew the opportunity was there to just double, triple, 10x what you had?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that happens, dude, was when I realized quickly that, I think one of the biggest things I wanted money for was to have the ability to spend, right? Just I could buy this, I have the power to spend, right? And once I realized that the power of spending had no real vision behind it, I just wanted the toy for the toy, I wanted the car for the car. There was like no real like depth of thought behind that.
Empty.
It was empty. It was kind of pointless. Yeah. I started thinking that, okay, well, the scaling of this emptiness is pointless. And why, what am I after if I scale this, right? Like, is it bigger impact? I definitely didn't want to go and become this super famous person. Like, I didn't want any of that sort of stuff, right? With this game. So I kind of just realized, what truly mattered to me in the end, like, if we come back full circle, is I love having a positive impact on the people around me. What I mean by positive impact, not giving them pep talks, but like actually like having the ability to sit down and have real conversations with them on things that'll make them break through their limitations and what they believe is possible, right? Which you don't need money to do. You can do that regardless of money. But if you have some money behind your name, there's an authority where people want to listen to you, and they might take your advice and actually go and do something for themselves. Because hey, if I can inspire you to go and do that, and you go and crush it, making 200 times as much as I did, maybe you're the right person to actually do that. It's kind of like when a owner of a company hires out a CEO, right? Because they're just pulling themselves out to the sides because there's somebody else who can do a better job. I almost rather play that role in people's lives now than being the center character of my own life, right? If I can help support you and help you teach you the points where you can go and crush it in life, to me that's a way higher form of existence than me just repeating the same thing over and over and over and having an X amount of money at the end, Yeah. I got to a point where my immediate needs were met, the needs of my mother was met, and the needs of my life was met, the needs of my future generations of kids was met. And I think, and then we're here now, and now it's time that, I take care of me a little bit, right? Like I got to sort of just stop worrying about that grind as much and focus on sort of my sort of onion layers I got to peel back and deal with.
I love it. True to oneself. Eisa, I appreciate you for hopping on.
Thank you very much.
Where can people check you out on IG?
On IG, it's at The Real Emai Emami. On Facebook, it's just facebook.com/Eisa Emami, and LinkedIn, just Eisa Emami, or Google Eisa Emami, whatever.
And I hope you're going to be doing a lot more of these. So you've been posting a lot of content.
Yeah. I think it's been cool. It's been cool talking about the story and coming across great energies like you guys and just having a chance to chat. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of gems from this recording for sure.
Thank you.
No, it was fun. It was fun. Yeah, definitely appreciate you for hopping on, man. Thank you. Yeah.
It was awesome. Thanks, guys.